city, I've been browsing. Treading water that they drowning. My head on a swivel, yeah. It's only really my surroundings.
Hello and welcome to episode 254 of the Smash Accept podcast. I'm your host, Michael Royer. You can find me on Twitter at DynastyDadFF. Guys, week 3 of the preseason is over. We're just 10 days away from the NFL kickoff. I have the flu, but like Jordan, I'm about to drop 38 with my flu game here and bring you guys our Dynasty player locks to rise in value. Snoog and I have been hitting hard on the redraft for guys in the Patreon, guys in the Discord, trying to get you guys in position to absolutely smash. But now we got to transition back into Dynasty. That's our bread and butter. That's what we really got to talk about because, we've given you those guys that are going to help you win. Now let's start talking about Dynasty because Dynasty is a lot more about value than it is winning and losing right here and there, and it translates over. Nobody better to chop that up with than my main man Snoog. How you doing, brother?
Doing good, Dad. I'm happy you're still alive, man. I mean, we got to keep this show rolling. We got to keep the listeners to get some good content out there. So I'm excited for this one. We're gonna talk about some guys that Dynasty landscape's all about market fluctuation. It's like the stock market: players rising, players dropping. You just need to stay on top and ahead of that curve, and you'll be good to go.
Absolutely. I'm down 7 pounds since the beginning of this. So I'm like, I'm feeling lighter. I'm feeling smooth. I'm ready to go. Just like my man Drake May. So big news, obviously. All the rookie quarterbacks are hitting. It looks like there's going to be at least 4, if not 3, if not 4 rookie quarterbacks are going to start. Bo Nix has gotten the starting job, and we'll talk about him probably a little bit later. Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams. But Drake May is the polarizing one, right? Drake May has, you and I both comped very, very similar to flashing athleticism and big arm talent like Justin Herbert. He's got a little bit of Josh Allen in his game. I posted those 2 things like 6 months ago during the draft process and got laughed out the building. And now I'm seeing big time analysts saying the same thing. You've been on that train the entire time. In Dynasty, I was off a little bit. I was a little bit higher on McCarthy because of the landing spot. But now we get Drake May. My ideal situation for him was to be a fantasy darling, right? Jacoby Brissett starts those first 4 games because those first 4 games are tough. And then Brissett gets benched. He comes in week 5 and just goes off, and that was the ideal situation. It looks like now with the Brissett injury, we might see Drake May as early as week 1, and I think that this guy, you look at the first 4 games, Cincinnati, Seattle, Jets, that's pretty tough. Then it opens up completely. But I think this is a guy that it is an absolute lock for Drake May to rise in value because he will start. And when he does, he has that Justin Herbert type, rookie ceiling. I think he's a guy that could easily put up, 18 to 20 fantasy points per game because you're going to see it with his legs, right? He has the mobility to put up 4 to 6 fantasy points a week with just his legs.
I love that you mentioned that because he's one of few quarterbacks to come out in a while to average 25 plus points per game in college through the air and 8 plus points per game on the ground game. So it just shows his dynamic ability on the field. And you see that, right? He looks comfortable out there. He looks like he's making the plays. His footwork's getting better. He's developing. He's picking up on things that people were knocking him for coming out. Mm-hmm. He looks just like UNC Drake May out there. He's making plays downfield. He's extending the ball with his legs when there's nothing there. He's going through his progressions. He's making the right decision. These are the things you want to see with no offensive line, with barely any weapons, and he's still looking comfortable out there. That's the type of player, that's the type of leader he is. He's also one of few quarterbacks, guys like C.J. Stroud, Patrick Mahomes, Caleb Williams, to put up 35-plus points per game in their sophomore season. If you just go back to 2022, Drake May was the only one challenging Caleb Williams for quarterback 1 in this class. Jaden Daniels, people didn't even think he was getting drafted yet. J.J. McCarthy, he couldn't even play over Cade McNamara. Drake May, he's the best quarterback in this class outside of Caleb Williams. I'll stand on that hill. He didn't get the right situation, but if you just look at what we did last year with C.J. Stroud, a lot of people were putting him at QB3, QB2 because they didn't like the situation. Mm-hmm. Good quarterbacks will always overcome bad situations if given the time and slowly building throughout the process. All you need is an offensive line and a good wide receiver weapon to see progress and gain value, and Drake May is going to get that eventually. So I'm excited for him. Like you said, difference between him and some of these other quarterbacks is he can do it on the ground too. So you're going to see a lot of play extensions. he's a threat to the defense. So when he's rolling out of that pocket, we saw yesterday with that sidearm 40-yard bomb downfield. Like
Beautiful.
he can create. He creates. He doesn't need to
Mhm.
be. He doesn't need plays to be created for him. He will organically create plays.
So the interesting part right now, and I think I have him pretty much, ranked. I'm redoing all my Dynasty rankings. Like I said, we're transitioning from redraft into Dynasty, covering back into this. And I have him above Bryce Young and Deshaun Watson, above Jared Goff slightly, and then right below Tua Tagovailoa and Trevor Lawrence. And I think that's kind of where he's at right now until he shows us anything. But Snoog, I mean, if he were to come out and flash, I could easily see him pass Trevor Lawrence, Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott for a long-term type of play. This is the type of player where I'm making some trades now to try to get him onto my rosters, especially, my rebuilding rosters where, there was a time where you could get Caleb Williams. You could get 2 firsts on top of Drake May to get Caleb Williams. And I think
Here's a little projection for you. Drake May goes out, rookie year, say he starts 14 games, puts up 3,200 yards, 18 touchdown passes, 6-7 interceptions, but throws up 400, 500 on the ground. Where do you think he's valued headed into next year?
That's the tricky part because, I mean, I have the top 8 to 10 not going anywhere. You know what I mean? I feel like that would put him – I would not move him above Herbert or Love, but I think that would put him in that, like I said, above Purdy, Dak. It's going to be hard to crack the top 10 anytime soon.
It's
you know what I mean?
really
But if he
hard,
does
yeah.
it – if he does it as a rookie, I mean, he would have to pass Burrow, Williams, Murray, Richardson, Herbert, Love, and without any injuries, I think he could get into that top 12. I think he does, and it would be back end. I don't think there's a scenario where he drops much below 18, 19. You know what I mean? Right now I have him at 17. Like even if he has a lot of ups and downs, he's not going to drop below Bryce Young or Deshaun Watson or Will Levis. I think he just maintains that kind of value. I see 6 trades on Dynasty Data Lab in the last 24 hours for a random 25 first. I'll smash that all day long. If it's going to be an early first,
He'd be
I would
one-on-one
need
next
something
year.
else. That's
Even
arguable.
if he went to the Patriots, he would have been the one-on-one.
Now's the time to make that mid first for a Drake May because you could definitely get that. You know what I mean? Or even if it's an early first, get Drake May plus something else. You know what I mean? Get yourself set up into that area. Some of these other trades, I'm like, I'm not understanding. Drake May in a second for Justin Fields in a first. Like I think Fields could start, but man, that's a gamble. That's a gamble and a half. You know what I mean?
Give it up on Justin Fields.
Guys trying to, this is one where I really say this in Dynasty is like, don't try to just push your luck and try to, a lot of times people try to take that quarterback and like, oh, if I only get that quarterback too, I'm going to compete. And this guy traded Drake May for Kirk Cousins in a second. And I feel like that could blow up in your face.
Such bad process.
Keep
Drake May and go buy Geno Smith for a second, or go buy Derek Carr for a couple thirds. Like just do something like that instead.
You need it.
The thing that holds back people in Dynasty from being good Dynasty players and being sharp is getting attached to bad players. If bad players have a good year, sell them because 90% of the time you're going to be in the right call. Like Puka Nacua, Amon-Ra St. Brown, like day 3 players that most people they're decent, but like sell high on them. That's good process because selling high on those guys, if you look at Damian Pierce, look at Darnell Mooney, look at Elijah Moore, look at all these other guys that had those good rookie years or those good flashes in year 2 or 3, gain a ton of value and then are just dust. Like that's more likely to happen than not. So don't be afraid just because you saw Puka, Amon-Ra, like that's not likely. That's rare. So don't be afraid to sell high on bad players.
For every
those guys aren't bad players.
Late drafted running back or undrafted running back like Isaiah Pacheco, you're
running
right. There's those Damian Pierces who are
James Robinson.
Damian Pierce is on the bubble of getting passed by Cam Akers, who's absolutely flashed. Stash Cam Akers if you can. Yeah, James Robinson.
People like Dynasty RB6.
That was crazy. You can't
until
bet
my
on
boy
those
Travis Etienne was drafted.
Quarterbacks in this situation, you bet now. You know what I mean? You bet early after your rookie draft and kind of get yourself in there. See, another one here is Drake May in a 25 late first for Jared Goff in the late 25 second. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm taking Drake May there, and I love Jared Goff. I really do.
Especially in 4-point passing, I'm smashing Drake May because he's got the rushing upside and he has the passing upside. That's
it was 6 point, but still, here's a 4-point passing one. Justin Herbert or Drake May, a 25 first and a 25 second.
If I'm rebuilding, I'm taking Drake May there all day.
I mean,
It's just
I see a lot
for
of trades I
Drake.
love here.
For Drake May, like things could be shit and he could still somehow make it work just because of the type of player he is. Like he's
Hmm.
fast, he's athletic, dude. Like he's not. He's like, remember Joe Burrow's rookie year when he was running a lot?
Hmm.
He's so much more of an athlete than Joe Burrow was. Like bad offensive line, just poor situation. He had T Higgins, but and Tyler Boyd, but like it's like Drake May could be like that guy that just takes off with his legs a lot and starts opening up the field. Like I think that even if he gives that rushing upside flash, Dad, and goes for 400 to 500 rushing yards, he's gaining value. I don't care if he throws 19 touchdown passes and 10 interceptions. Like people are gonna hold on to that rushing upside, and he's gonna just be at least stagnant or gain value headed into year two. I think.
Yeah, some of the other trades that I also got to caution on the other side is there is some risk there. You know, you got to look at right now. I just saw a trade, C.J. Stroud for David Njoku. David Njoku, Drake May in a second for C.J. Stroud. Like you can't make those kind of trades.
You can't
I
do
saw
that.
another one, Lamar Jackson for Drake May, a first and a second, and like you're banking on he has to be that good just to pan
Yeah.
out. You know what I mean? Like those are not the kind of trades where we're just like, all right, that seems to make sense. If you can take a Justin Herbert and you get a first and a second, that makes sense a little bit because then you're into an area where you're going to close that gap. But if you're trying to go to Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, you know, CJ Stroud, I feel like you need two firsts. You need two firsts, and one of them's got to be early. You know, and you got to, and there is ways to win around that. But I think that's kind of what you're worried about. Then staying with the same offense, and I know, you know, we're going to turn off half the crowd here, but the Patriots offense could be exciting, low key. You know, they're gonna have finally a quarterback. Then you look, we're gonna have Jalen Polk. Jalen Polk right now is going to rise in value, guaranteed. Like this is someone who's established himself as the. I know you were going to talk. You'll say Javon Baker, but I mean he's established himself in camp as the wide receiver one, and I think Baker might be equally as talented, but I think he's the guy that is going to get those targets. The trades I'm seeing for Jalen Polk are just pennies on the dollar, you know, and I'm like I'm kind of blown away by them. Tell me what you see with the Patriots wide receiver game, because the veterans, I'm not interested in DeMario Douglas. You know, I think Pop Douglas is just, I mean, it has to be PPR to even consider him because of the low ADOT and the yards that he's going to get and things like that. But that one's one that scares me. I'm more, if I'm going to bet high, I'm going to bet Polk. If I'm going to bet low, I'm going to bet Baker. I have not been buying any Douglas.
Exactly. No, I agree with you. I think floor is Polk, ceiling is Baker, and Baker's cheaper. So I mean, the correct answer, I'm not going to sit here and tell you one or the other. It's both. Buy both. Whoever you can get your hands on both of them. But one thing I do want to say to you, Dad, and to everyone listening, everyone that's going to watch this video is, when Drake May and Javon Baker and Jalen Polk are on that football field, who is Drake May targeting? It's Javon Baker 10 out of 10 times. He has targeted him every single time he is dropping back for a reason. So I don't need to sit here and tell you that. Drake May knows that. So that's all you really need to hear there. So let's just say that. But I think Jalen Polk is interesting because I said like a real ceiling for him is like a Chris Godwin. And I think they play so similar. They can catch everything coming their way. They do really good in that like short to intermediate range and like kind of like in that Z, that Y spot. And I think that he can play the slot well. He's got strong hands. He's a decent route runner. He's just not a great athlete. Doesn't really win downfield like that. He's more just like a pretty well-suited all-around receiver that you need to have with a Javon Baker, right? You got that flashy X, that guy that wins downfield a lot, that flashy like route runner, like good separation, but like lacks the skills up here. Like he doesn't have the IQ. He's not learning the playbook as fast as Polk. He's not doing the things the coaches want as good as Polk. But he's on the field. If you're like, all right, here you're gonna line up and press man coverage on Polk and Baker. Baker's gonna blow him out of his socks 10 out of 10 times. So like the raw talent is Baker, but just everything else, the mechanics, the IQ, the football on field stuff is going to Polk because he's just, I don't know if it's because he went to Washington, just that Power 5 program there with all those Washington wide receivers coming out like Puka, Roma Dunze, Jay McMillan, a lot of pro-ready systems, a lot of pro-ready offenses.
That's the key. Yeah.
I think that's more why Polk is just ready to go now, because it's a process. Everybody has that learning curve. So I just think Drake May, Jalen Polk, Javon Baker are all great buy lows, and we could look back at this in a couple of years and be like, damn, like we could have been buying these guys for pennies on the dollar. We could have got Drake May outside the top 18, top 15 quarterbacks in Dynasty. Like, this is when you got to jump on that talent and get ahead of the curve, because even if you're wrong, you're not losing out on your first round pick. You're losing out on a 5th round starter pick or a 10th or a 15th. So these are the times you want to get in. These are the league winning moves you need to make.
The next one I love because we've kind of come full circle on it. He is outside the top 40 redraft wide receivers. He's outside the top 24 dynasty wide receivers. And this is someone who, put up 4.0 yards per route run in college. He's someone that had the fastest shuttle time we've seen in the last 10 years. Someone that in the same wide receiver room as Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave put up 95, 1,609, and 9 touchdowns. And this is someone where Jackson Smith-Njigba, everyone has written him off after a poor rookie season. This isn't the same type of rookie season that Quentin Johnston had. Quentin Johnston just was not catching balls, was healthy the entire year. Most people forget that Jackson Smith-Njigba missed most of training camp with that wrist injury. Most people realize that if you look a little bit deeper, the offensive coordinator was clueless on how to utilize Jackson Smith-Njigba. He had 60-plus receptions in his rookie season, even though he was delayed by the wrist injury, even though, he was buried on the depth chart, which he shouldn't have been. You draft a guy in round 1, you got to be running more wide receiver. There are 3 wide receiver sets, and they were not. They got to incorporate him where he can dominate in the slot. This is someone that has 90-plus reception ceiling with his new offensive coordinator. Like, I'm excited to go from a run-first offense. Kenneth Walker excites me. Jackson Smith-Njigba, DK Metcalf. Like, I'm finding myself kind of all in on Seattle, and it's only come about in the last month, but I'm starting to buy in on all these guys.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what people don't understand with him is everything was against him last year. If you look at Ryan Grubb, their new offensive coordinator, if you look at Mike McDonald, their new head coach coming in, these guys are viewed as passing game gurus. Like, these guys are viewed to elevate the passing game, bring a new dynamic to the offense. And the way they've spoken so highly on Jackson Smith-Njigba, a guy that, keep in mind, went to Ohio State, played with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, who are future superstars in the making, and put up 1,600 yards in that same wide receiver room as a true sophomore. He was just absolutely elite. 4+ yards per route run. The shuttle times were off the roof, 99th percentile. He is really that Amon-Ra St. Brown type player that can win in that similar type way and across the middle underneath with his route running. I mean, he's just so smart as well. He's one of those guys that was so pro ready. He was just dealt every bad card possible. Geno Smith, injured for games, playing through the injury. Offensive line was struggling from game to game. Kenneth Walker was injured. They had Pete Carroll there, who's just very run-heavy style. The offense just wasn't clicking. Like, even DK Metcalf, who's one of the league's better wide receivers, has taken a step down every year since Russ left and since things have just gone downhill. Tyler Lockett's there, but he's injured now. He's going through all these. He's 31 years old. Like, he put up 800-something yards or 900-something yards last year. Like, DK, the Seahawks weren't putting up 3 1,000-yard wide receivers with Geno Smith at quarterback. Maybe now JSN and DK can both be 1,000-yard receivers. I think that's very capable. I would just love to see JSN used more down across the middle of the field and down 8 to 10 yards plus downfield rather than at the line of scrimmage. Like, let him organically get that stuff. Like, let him get those touches schemed to him at the line of scrimmage. But organically, he's going to be a guy that can create that separation and beat the zone 10 out of 10 times. So I just think, he's still 21 years old. He has the pedigree. He's a first-round talent. He was so talented at Ohio State, even as a freshman, as a sophomore. So I just think that he's guaranteed to gain value if he just takes a step. If he puts up 800 yards,
he doesn't
70,
even exactly. It has to be like
Rashi Rice type rookie year, but in year 2, everyone's just going to be back in on him because then by year 3. So
all he needs is 70 receptions and 1,000 yards, and that's
he'll
4
be
receptions.
As a top 15 dyno.
That's 4 receptions for 80 yards a game, and I think that exactly. So that's why I wanted to talk to you. Is if he goes over 1,000 yards, okay, let's say he's wide receiver 24 to 28 range, in 2024. You got to look at the landscape right now. That for me would put him, depending on what Tank Dell does, that would put him above or equal to T. Higgins, above Pittman, on the same level as Pickens, depending on what he does. Like DK Metcalf, DJ Moore are going to be going 27. So he's going to start getting himself into that top 20. Now, the ceiling, if Tyler Lockett were to miss time, if DK Metcalf were to miss time, we will see him assert himself into that wide receiver 1 role because he's done it. He did it at Ohio State.
Yep.
He's someone that has an elite level skill set. He's not someone that's just going to be tossed in there. And I think Tyler Lockett, he's kind of like the Frank Gore of the wide receiver position. He's just been so consistent for so long. And I think he's just at some point he has to burn out. You know what I mean? And last year he was fantastic again. But I think we get a situation here where Jackson Smith-Njigba is all but guaranteed to rise in value. And the guy that I have ranked right underneath him in Dynasty right now will also guarantee to rise in value. Actually, the next two that we can both talk about, because one's my guy, one's your guy. Mine's Brian Thomas Jr. He has flashed at camp. He has put it where that wide receiver 1 that Trevor Lawrence always wanted and needed. He has not had that, and this is him. I think Brian Thomas Jr., there was some worry in the beginning with saying, oh, well, they also got Gabe Davis. Okay, if Gabe Davis didn't do it in Buffalo, as the wide receiver 2 with Josh Allen, he's not going to surpass a talent like Brian Thomas Jr. Brian Thomas Jr. had 17 touchdowns last year. He is electric. He is catching the deep ball. He's catching the deep to intermediates. He looks absolutely phenomenal. And I think Snoog, I posted this when we first started the whole, moving into redraft comments of he could be the rookie wide receiver to have 10 plus touchdowns. And I got 5 to 6 DMs saying, I don't know what you're smoking, Dad. Like, this is not going to happen. But I could easily see him finishing in the top 3 rookie wide receivers. I could easily see him getting 10 plus touchdowns. The interesting part, is how is Calvin Ridley's share going to be divvied out? I see some people thinking that means Evan Ingram's going to catch more touchdowns. But Evan Ingram's never scored touchdowns in his life. Mm-hmm. He's been a 6 or less every single year. Brian Thomas Jr. is a touchdown magnet. Calvin Ridley was number 1 in the NFL in end zone shares at 42%. So when we're looking in the end zone, he's looking for that big wide receiver. That big wide receiver now is Brian Thomas Jr. And I was getting him in rookie drafts. In the beginning of the process, he was my 109. I was getting him as late. I drafted him at the 204 in a couple super flex drafts. Wow. He was falling to the early second just because people were making up false narratives because they're trying to figure things out. But he's been right up there the entire time for me, as Xavier Worthy has been for you.
Yeah, both of these guys, it's been so wishy-washy for me throughout the process, going back to the late fall, early winter of last year.
They're right there, right? And
yeah,
my question for you real quick. I don't have Ladd in the same tier as these two anymore.
No.
Ladd, I did for a while. You know what I mean? But I don't anymore.
I forced Ladd into the same tier as those two. Ladd is not either of those two. He's not on the same level as those two.
So if you can give up Ladd plus for either of them, or even, I think you could give up Ladd straight up for Jackson Smith-Njigba right now. And I'm like, I'm not anti-Ladd right now, but I don't. The ceiling is not the same.
I've always liked Ladd, but he was just forced, especially a lot of the analytic-driven people were just forcing him up so high. And the NFL came out and showed us, right, that he's not this elite route runner that we all thought he was. That was like this like superstar Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, he's good. He's a good player, and he's good for the Chargers, and he has a great chance at being their wide receiver 1, which will probably be good for his fantasy value.
For year 1,
but just from an NFL talent perspective, he's just not on that level as those two. But I think fantasy wise, he can be. That's why I do have him in that tier. But I can see breaking him out of that tier just because the way he wins, and he's gonna fit in that offense so well with Herbert, and Herbert just absolutely feeds his slot wide receivers. But I think Xavier Worthy and Brian Thomas Jr., there's a couple things in common with them. Elite athletes, both were absolutely I have a tweet on Twitter, getting a little off topic here, but I have a tweet on Twitter that I said, if Xavier Worthy and Brian Thomas both don't run 4.3s, I will Venmo somebody in this thread $20. And so many people thought it was the biggest lock that neither of them were gonna, or both weren't gonna be 4.3 runners, and they both ran 4.3. So I saw that speed on tape. I knew that explosiveness was coming from both of these guys. And they're not just vertical threats, right? Like, they can win with their feet. They win in their routes. They win all over the field. They're good with the ball in their hands. That's what you want to look for in today's NFL. And they're both in top 15 scoring offenses. Worthy's on probably the best scoring offense in the NFL. And I think Xavier Worthy is going to have a very similar rookie year as Jordan Addison did. Just score an absolute shit ton of touchdowns and just get like 800 to 900 yards on like 60 receptions. Like, I think that's so doable for him. And I think Brian Thomas Jr. can also be like Jordan Addison, where he just scores a shit ton of touchdowns in that vertical threat role, gets good volume, gets good targets, has some big games, and gains value. So both of these guys are great values, and I think both of them are buys. So I would say both of these guys are guys that I would attach my name to as well with you, Dad.
Love it. Tim Perry put, Dynasty Dad, thanks for the commitment to the game. My drafts is happening this morning. Wish me good luck. Ale, best of luck, Tim. You don't need luck if you're in the Dynasty Smash Accept Patreon, though. Come in there. We got you covered. The Patreon people are getting a little confused by it. The Patreon's a link to the Discord. The Discord's where it happens. Snoop, let's talk about some trades with these guys, because I think there's some real value to be extracted from these three. You know, I see some quick trades here, and I want to make this quick, but Chris Olave or Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jermaine Burton in a late 25 first.
I take Jackson's side.
Yeah. Jackson Smith and Jigba or Njoku and Spears.
Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yeah. Jackson Smith and Jigba and Terry McLaurin or DK Metcalf.
Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yeah, these are easy, man. This is Najee Harris, the 108 at 25 second, or Jackson Smith and Jigba and a 25 first.
Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yeah, like there's so many trades right now.
The 108 in 2025 would probably be really high, just because it's probably looking like it's like McCarthy or maybe May slips there in some casual drafts. But
yeah, and then random 25 first. I'm paying random 25 first for him right now because Jackson Smith and Jigba at worst is the wide receiver 3 of next year's class. I mean, McMillan and Burton are up there, but he's in that same tier talent-wise as the two of them. And you think another year in this offense, Tyler Lockett supposedly not there next year. You know, it's just him and DK. He definitely could eat. Sam Howell could be the quarterback that actually unlocks everyone, or they go with someone else, because this is probably it for Geno. The next guy we got to look at, let's look at some Brian Thomas Jr. trades. The first one I really got to highlight because I think it's very feasible, and people that want to win, they really push the chips in. Devontae Adams or Brian Thomas Jr.?
Contender, Adams, rebuild, Brian Thomas.
I see. I'm still taking Brian Thomas either way. Talent-wise, I think Brian Thomas Jr. is like the 109, and Devontae Adams is outside those first for me. This is where you make those kind of moves.
If you look at the market value,
100%.
Yeah, I would like work my way. I wouldn't do it straight up. I'd work my way through that. But like, if you're just telling me gun to my head, pick one for contending, pick one for rebuild. That's what it's going to be.
How about this one's kind of interesting? Bo Nix and Brian Thomas Jr. or JJ McCarthy and Pickens?
Bo Nix and Brian Thomas or JJ.
Oh, and also Jalen McMillan's on
and Pickens.
Yeah, I'm loving these McCarthy trades that I've been seeing, and you know he's not on our list today.
Not good at football.
But hey, Bo Nix has been sharp. Bo Nix has been sharp.
My boy JC.
People are saying Drew Brees 2.0, and I'm like, no, let's pump the brakes.
JC and I were chatting about it during the pre-draft, and he said Derek Carr, and that is literally exactly what Bo Nix is. He's just like a spitting image of Derek Carr, like same type of thrower, same type of player. Like, I think that's what his career trajectory is going to look like, which is a hit. If you can get that in the early second and get a whole career out of Derek, sign me up. Like, I love that, but
I'm not saying he's going to have a Drew Brees type trajectory, but they also thought Drew Brees was that guy until he went with Sean Payton.
I was like,
you know what
3 years old?
Brees I love it.
I was still with a blanket and a binky in my mouth.
Phillip Rivers wasn't having kids at this point, but now he's got like 17. So we'll go from that route. But JJ McCarthy, okay, every first round quarterback that has been injured before the draft or early on in the season has actually risen in value. He is not going anywhere. You can actually just buy up. Brett Collins says blockbuster. Love when you guys comment on YouTube. Make sure you guys hit that smash follow on YouTube.
Send
Brett
it to
Collins.
Your friends.
Exactly. Share it.
I know a lot of people try to hide us. I've seen a lot of messages in my DMs. So, like, I don't want my friends to see it, but like, come on, share the love. Like, we're doing this Discord, for you guys.
We tell you guys, if you get any of your friends in, we'll pay you $5. We have had one out of the 370 plus people in there. There's been one that has done that. And I asked, well, why don't you do that? They're like,
Yeah.
I don't want to share this with my friends. I
One
want to
of-
kick their ass. So
One
I'm
guy
like,
was like, I could get 4 of my friends in right now, but I don't want them to know. I'm like, dude.
So it's the best kept secret. You guys can share the YouTube page though, all right? So Brett Collins says Nico and Brees or Lamb and Kamara in a 12-team, 1 quarterback PPR start 8. You guys are balling.
Nico and Brees all day.
Oh,
long.
yeah. Yo, dude.
All day long. Brees all RB1 overall dead.
There it is.
Tell us why.
You know
Tell
it.
us why.
You know
Tell
it.
us why.
Yo, hey, we got the calf injury, 417 touches. Christian McCaffrey, the offense is going to start leaning a little bit into more on Jordan Mason. Brees Hall was the RB2 last year, and he was coming off that ACL injury, but 20.2 points per game after he got that 75% snap share. Although, dude, he had 995 yards as RB2 when he's arguably a top 2. It's him, Gibbs, Brees. You know, there's like Bijan that are guys that could rush for 1,500 yards. I see it happening in 2024.
Leave
and then
every
you get
draft
Nico
with Jordan Mason.
Yeah. Oh, dude, that was my post. I had it today. I was like, that's my biggest riser. All right, next guy I want to talk about, and I love this show. This has been a fun one so far. Give me 1 second here. Next guy up on the list, I want to roll with my man. You know it's coming. We already talked to Xavier Worthy. It's still Rashee Rice. Rice is not going to get suspended. And here's the roller coaster that's going to happen, right? Okay, you had Rashee Rice. He was wide receiver 15, worth maybe the 107. And then we had the suspension talk, and then he's gone from 107 down to 207. No lie. And Snook and I were saying, buy. Just go buy him. Go get him. Go get Rashee Rice. We literally had Brock make a killer, edit. Just say, go get Rashee Rice. Some of you guys listened. You're welcome. Some of you guys didn't. Now he's back up to a late first again. He is going to play up until at least December 8th. I think he plays the whole year. But December 8th, what's that, week 12?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's pretty far into the fantasy season. His value right now is arguably 110 to 112. He is a guy that is going to, he was a wide receiver 1 over the final 5 weeks after he got 75% snap share. Hollywood Brown is going to miss a beginning part of the season, at least 4 games. Xavier Worthy's still getting acclimated to the offense. He is going to be a wide receiver 1 for the first 6 to 8 weeks, and he's going to go from the 112 to the 107, 108 type value. And that's when you sell, because what's going to happen is he's going to get suspended. There's no when, there's no if, it's when. And when he does, Xavier Worthy's value and his are going to flip-flop. So it's play him for the first couple of weeks, get all that value out of there, and then flip him for Xavier Worthy plus, and then you're going to see your value just swap.
Yeah, I love this, and I get so many questions, like people in the Patreon or in the Discord, people on Twitter, like, how do you like Rice and Xavier Worthy? Well, same reason you like Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, or Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, or T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, or Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. No, those guys aren't as good as those guys as number 1s, and probably not the number 2s, but anytime you get an elite quarterback with the best offensive coach, Andy Reid's the best offensive-minded head coach ever. Like, I will firmly stand on that hill with one of the best quarterbacks of all time, probably the second best quarterback of all time, right there behind Brady, and the kid's 29 years old. But anytime you get wide receivers that are talented in that situation, buy into them. I don't care who they are. Like Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy are going to be 1A, 1B long-term, and they both win in different ways, which is so key, because there's a world where Rashee Rice throws up 90 to 100 receptions and 1,000 yards, and Xavier Worthy throws up like 60, 70 receptions for 1,000 yards and like 8 to 10 touchdowns. Like they win in different ways.
Totally
and both
different.
Can be so efficient with their volume that even with Travis Kelce there now, and if he's there for another year or 2, like he signed that extension, they're all going to eat, dude. Like Patrick Mahomes has thrown for 5K yards twice in his career already. He can do it. He throws for 4,000 every year. He can do this type of number. He threw 50 touchdowns in a year.
There's a lot of people
ridiculous, and he loves that deep threat, especially when he can rely on them, like Tyreek Hill was. So
there's a lot of people saying, "Well, Rashee Rice was the only guy in town. That's why he did what he did." No, he was 3rd in yards after contact. He was 1st in yards after contact per touch. He was 1st in rookie red zone targets. He was 10th in yards per route run, 3rd in yards of separation. Snook, yards after the catch and yards after separation and yards after route run, or yards per route run, those are not Jag stats. Those are not volume of like Jarvis Landry catching 140 balls. So he has, that's not what we're talking about here.
That's
we're
a good comp for Rashi Rice, though, Jarvis. I could see that type of, like, the way he wins.
But he has really good yards after the catch ability, very good separation. I'm all in on
third in yards after catch is a rookie.
Yeah, that's insane.
That's ridiculous. He's
up there with Debo and all those different stats for broken tackles and those things. The other guy that I think, we talk about situations and that, how things are going to shake out in wide receiver rooms. Everyone's on the Nico Collins train. People are trying to buy Stephon Diggs cheap. They should be also buying Tank Dell. This isn't a situation. You said Worthy and Rice. People ask me, is it Tank or Nico? I got 6 DMs this week saying, which guy should I invest in Dynasty? I said both. Both. They're like, well, what about Stephon Diggs? He's gone after this year. Trust me, he's gone. He's already shown some diva type things. Both of these guys are tied to a top 5 passing offense with unbelievable chemistry with CJ Stroud. Both of them already have
the first passing offense. The best.
Top 5. We'll go.
Top 5 is fair. Mahomes is the best always. You can't not say the Chiefs aren't the best. But the Texans
posted this
2.
I believe that. You posted this the other day. When both Nico Collins and Tank Dell played, Dell outscored him in PPR, yards, and touchdowns. Can't deny any of that. Average of 2.0 yards per route run, paced at over 1,200 plus yards and 10 touchdowns pre-injury as a rookie. Snoop, honestly, why in God's name was he blocking in the goal line as a tiny guy like this? I'll never know.
If I ever get to shake D'Amico Ryan's hand, I'm going to shake him with the happiest face I've ever had and say, damn it, why'd you have Tank Dell in there on the goal line?
Well, it created opportunities for us to buy in Dynasty.
Exactly, because Dad, if he didn't get hurt, where would he be valued right now if he put up that 1,200-yard, 10-touchdown season as a rookie?
Well, see, you got to look at it. Then maybe Nico doesn't have the same blow up. Right now, I have Nico as wide receiver 13. I think he'd be in that 13 to 17 range.
He would be above Nico Collins. He would be. If he didn't get hurt, arguably, he would be valued above him.
Because maybe Nico didn't do that. You know what I mean? But he would be in that tier of Nico, Waddle, Ayuk, Devonta, Adunze.
Yeah. I mean, Nico's unbelievable. And that's what separates Nico from Tank and Diggs is Nico's the X. He's not coming off the field. If it's 1-2 wide receiver sets, it's between Diggs and Tank Dell to see
he's the clear choice.
Field. Yeah,
but
he's
I mean,
the guy.
From wide receiver 13 to 24, I only have them difference between, say, the next year's 106, 107 for the top tier. And then the 18 to 24 is between 107 to 108. So there's not a huge discrepancy in value. If you like one or the other, make your move. But I think Tank Dell is a screaming value. I think he's a guy that, I would be making moves for wherever I could. Last year, what I was doing, and we talk about this in rebuilds all the time, one particular trade, I traded JSN for Tank Dell and a first. And then when Tank Dell was blowing up, I traded Tank Dell even for Jackson Smith and Jigba. And then later on in the year when he got hurt, he traded him back to me. So I ended up just getting Tank, a first, plus some other pieces just for Jackson Smith and Jigba, and then got him back.
Wow.
You got to play around with him. You got to understand the injuries. You got to play guys that, in Dynasty, if someone's not putting up points, someone's willing to sell them cheaper than what they should. If I could tier up off of Jaden Reed, Ladd McConkey, Jordan Addison, any of the veterans like Evans, Adams, Diggs.
That's where you get into that range, right? Like that Jaden Reed, Jordan Addison, like Ladd McConkey. That's where you start getting into that range where you're just like, are these guys gonna be really good or are
that's
they
tier 6? Yeah, tier 6 for me. And I think I'm about to
out
move
of that range.
I think I'm about to move Debo out of that, but tier 6 for me is JSN, Thomas, Reed, Worthy, McConkey, Addison, and 3 or 4 of those guys I could see jumping out of that. And then I could see tier 6 disappearing completely, and all the 3 of those guys move up into tier 5, and the other ones move down into tier 7. You know what I mean? And that's kind of where I'm at. There's a lot that can be moved.
It depends how they use Reed. Like if they keep like manufacturing touches for him, like they do with Rashi Rice, like they do with Debo, then I think Reed will always have like good value and always be like a good piece to the Packers.
Yeah,
and that's like where he kind of separates himself from like Wicks, Watson, Dubs, right? Is he like gets his, and those guys aren't eating into exactly what he does on the field. But Watson, Dubs, and Wicks all win in similar ways, all like are like that outside type style guy. So I think that's why Reed should be higher than those guys just for what we know and what we have because of that. But Dontavian Wicks is the best wide receiver on the Packers.
I like it.
Let me that one in there.
I knew you were going to throw it in there. You know what I mean? Like it was mandatory Wicks season. You know, we're talking about young guys, so he's got to talk about Wicks.
I'm
We
here
talk
for a
running
good
backs. It's
time,
got to
not
be
a long
Kamara.
time, Dad.
All
Come
right.
on now.
All right. Couple other guys, you know, that we've talked about ad nauseum that people will get mad if we keep talking about. But just a reminder, George Pickens and Kyler Murray are never going to be this cheap again. Everyone keeps saying, you know, Kyler Murray right now is outside the top 12 on some sites. Outside, you know, you can get him in the second round of Superflex startups. That just doesn't make sense. He will be a top 7 to 8 dynasty quarterback next year in the same area. I would argue that potentially above Burrow or in that same area as Burrow, Caleb, and Richardson, depending on how things shake out.
If he outscores Joe Burrow this year, I'm taking Kyler over him.
Yeah. Well, it was only.
What are we gonna say? Kyler's injury prone. Like Joe Burrow's had every injury in the book. I'm done.
Kyler
with
Murray
shit.
was a top 5 quarterback a year and a half ago. So I mean, like if he stays healthy, it'll be there. And Pickens, guys,
McBride.
Can we just stop saying George Pickens isn't good? Okay, like people in the 4 games without Deontay Johnson, 4 for 127 and a touchdown on 10 targets, 4 for 75. 3 for 25, 6 for 130, and 1 on 10 targets. That is really good volume. And almost every single game. Yeah, with Kenny Pickett. I put that the other day that he's like
Kenny Pickett can't hit the broadside of a shed from 10 feet away.
It's a massive QB upgrade, and they're like, Wilson's not much better than Pickett. And I'm like, all right.
Yeah, if you say that to me, you just lose all credibility.
Redraft people are coming.
Entertain anything you say.
Some of the redraft trolls are coming out of hiding here, and they're trying to go with those kind of remarks. But I think that's an absolute smash. A couple other guys that I wanted to touch on real quick because those were our big guys. But I mean, I have 2 tight ends here that I think are a lock to gain in value. One of them is just value depressed TJ Hawkinson. He's been top 5 every single year that he plays. Right now, he's going at tight end 8 in startups. I'm sorry. It's just, he's going to go back to that same value. People act like he's 28. He's going to be there. The other guy that I think it's just injury value, you know, as the day he comes back, his value moves back up. The other one for me is Jake Ferguson. Jake Ferguson is a lock to be the number 2 target in Dallas and a lock for 10 touchdowns.
I love the TJ Hawkinson idea that you just said, especially for redraft, because like if you don't get one of like the big 7 or big 8 tight ends, I would love the idea of pairing up like a Jake Ferguson with a TJ Hawkinson, or a Dallas Goedert with a TJ Hawkinson, or David Njoku with a TJ Hawkinson, because Hawkinson, dude, I just did that $100 redraft with a bunch of guys like that, Eric Moody, Joe Orico, a lot of those guys. A redraft league that we did last year too, and I noticed that TJ Hawkinson fell so far, and I took Dalton Kincaid. I got the Josh Allen Kincaid stack, but I was just like thinking like, damn, like fading tight end isn't that bad if you can get like Njoku or Ferguson and then take Hawkinson too late, because then you just get 2 great tight ends.
Listen to these trades. So I've been getting a lot of people, Snook. They're coming to me and they're trying to trade. You know, they're trying to trade TJ Hawkinson for Evan Ingram. And I'm like, what are you doing? They're like, well, I only have Bowers and Ingram. Okay. So play Bowers and Hawkinson. So play Bowers until Hawkinson's ready. You know what I mean? But these trades I'm seeing, Calvin Ridley for TJ Hawkinson for the 112, Ramondre Stevenson for TJ Hawkinson in a second for Kelsey. That one's close. Will Levis for TJ Hawkinson for the 201. You know, like, what are you people doing? He's not dead. This is someone that has been a top 5 dynasty tight end. He's not going anywhere. And if nothing else, the Jordan Addison suspension should raise his value, because Darnold or whoever's going to quarterback there, please let it be Mike White. Please let Mike White just get signed with Minnesota. Anyways, I'm saying he's going to be the number 2 guy in targets down the stretch, and he's going to put up massive points. He did it last year. He was the tight end 1 before his injury last year. This is like someone that has that in his range of outcomes. I know you're not huge on Ferguson. It's not as much the talent, even though he did have most of the boxes that we're trying to check in college to be an elite level tight end. He's someone that I think is the cheapest option when you look out there. I mean, you should be able to still get him for a second or a toss in on top of that. And then I have 2 running backs real quick, you know, that under the radar. I think Tajay Spears and Javonte Williams both will increase in value. You know, we've hit on the running back position. So weird, Snoog, right now, because I don't see a lot of guys. I mean, there's tons of rookies that if an injury happens, they will rise in value.
Yeah.
But an actual starter, it's tough to predict because we're almost avoiding this tier. We're saying go get your Kamaras, your Mixons, your Henrys, your Najees even, and then go ahead and invest in elite. But this has been a fun show. You know, like it's good to be back. It's good to get that flu game. You know, you got it. You remember Jordan dropped his flu game. He dropped that 3 at the end of the game. You're about to drop a 3 on us right now because I saw the hand go up like you're a student in class. Let's go.
I'm gonna finish this off strong, Dad.
As long as it's not Wicks, I'll mute you.
All right, he's one of the guys. He is one of the guys. But I'm gonna give everyone listening 4 players that are damn well cheap, can gain a ton of value that we haven't talked about or we talked a tiny bit about, and one of them's John Mechie. I mean, he is a guy that is so much more talented than what he has proved through the start of his career. I mean, how many guys do you know tear their ACL coming in as a prospect, get drafted early round 2 in a good wide receiver class, and then recover from the ACL, get ready to play, and then get diagnosed with leukemia? I mean, like John Mechie is an absolute warrior. He's back. He's healthy. The whole coaching staff, the whole team, CJ Stroud, everyone's talked so highly on him. He's a great route runner. He can win with his feet. He's just a good player. Came from Alabama. Good prospect. Produced there. He's dirt cheap. I think he's going to get traded. I don't want him to as a guy that loves the Texans, but I think he's going to get traded soon. So if he does, he'll gain a ton of value. We talked about Javon Baker, Dontavian Wicks, another guy, Kendra Miller, another talented guy that injuries are just not gone his way early on. Still 21 years old. Great prospect. I mean, he was most people's RB 3 to 5 coming out. NFL viewed him highly, and he's a guy that could get cut, could get traded, or just stay with the team. So he's another guy that you could just buy at literally his lowest value. I mean, I bought him for thirds, fourths and thirds, a late second for him and a couple thirds. Like, there's a lot of things you can do, but just stay active in the market and keep an eye on those talented players that are losing value because of injuries or situations and buy low on them.
Love it. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and enjoy the process.